The reason many people never become wealthy before 40 is not that they earn too little. It is that every time they get a raise, they turn it into a more expensive life. There are two people, both 27 years old, both working, both getting raises after a few years. The first person starts earning more and immediately upgrades their lifestyle. A new phone, an apartment that feels more appropriate, and weekends that have to be spent going out as a reward because I have worked hard. The second person looks pretty boring from the outside. They still use old things if they are not broken yet, automatically separate their money the moment it hits the account, rarely buy things that impress other people, and pay close attention to the numbers nobody wants to look at, like the emergency fund, the savings rate, and monthly cash flow. 10 years later, the first person has a lot of moments worth posting on social media.
The second person has the power to quit a job if necessary, has money to absorb an unexpected hit, and has choices without having to bow to every situation just because cash is tight. The hard truth is this: most people are not poor because they earn too little. They are poor because every time they earn more, they unconsciously build a more expensive life to maintain. The human brain is strange. It does not take long for comfort to turn into a basic minimum: a better chair, a nicer car, a more expensive meal. At first, those things feel like rewards. Very quickly, they become the standard. And from that moment on, you are not spending because you need to. You are spending to keep the feeling that you are moving up. The paradox is this: the more you want to look successful early, the easier it is to rob yourself of the ability to become truly wealthy. People who become financially comfortable before 40 usually do not live in flashy, explosive ways. They repeat the things nobody claps for. They do not raise their standard of living too fast. They do not buy things in emotional moments. They consistently keep money before spending money. And they always leave a cushion so life cannot knock them down after just one bad turn. It does not sound exciting, but those boring habits quietly buy them the most expensive thing of all: peace. And peace around money is what keeps you from selling your future cheap just to solve what is missing right now. Not everyone who spends less becomes rich, but almost nobody becomes sustainably wealthy while living entirely on emotion. Quiet wealth is not a game reserved for people who are more exceptional than everyone else. It is the reward for people who are willing to live more consciously than their instincts want them to. The first habit sounds painfully boring, but it stretches your financial runway faster than almost anything else. Live below the level you could afford, not just below the level you currently earn. The moment most likely to make people poorer is not when they lose a job. It is when they just started earning more. Because that is exactly when the brain starts whispering something sweet. I deserve this. And suddenly, a salary that rises from about 600 to 1,000 US dollars a month, or roughly 15 million to 25 million Vietnamese dong, makes life rise right along with it. A slightly nicer room, a slightly newer phone, meals that feel a little less depressing, little trips to restore balance. Nobody thinks they are wasting money. Everything seems justified. Everything feels reasonable. That is the real problem. The trap is this: people do not upgrade their lifestyle through one big explosion. They do it through a long series of tiny adjustments that do not feel painful. One more app subscription. Switching from a coffee that costs about $1.40 or around 35,000 Vietnamese dong to one that costs about $3, which is around 75,000 Vietnamese dong. Taking more rides because it feels less exhausting. Living somewhere more expensive because it feels safer and more convenient. Each expense by itself is too small to trigger alarm, but together they quietly turn a new lifestyle into a mandatory one. And from that point on, you are no longer earning money to move up. You are earning money to keep the new machine from collapsing. The paradox is that outsiders will think you are progressing. You dress better, move through life better, and seem more put together. But behind that picture, your financial margin is getting thinner. One company bonus gets cut, one hospital stay, one family emergency, one moment when you want to quit but cannot. It only takes one small disruption for the whole feeling of, I am doing fine, to start cracking. A lot of people think they lack the opportunity to become rich. In reality, they are just maintaining a version of life that is too expensive for the strength of their finances. People who get rich early usually do not put on many performances. Their income rises, but they do not let their expenses run as fast as their income. They do not use every improvement in earnings to prove something to the world. They protect the distance between the money they make and the money they need to live. That distance looks invisible, but it is exactly where wealth is born. You do not get rich from the money you earn. You get rich from the money you keep before your ego has a chance to spend it. The second habit is even more boring than the first. Automatically keep money before you get the chance to spend it. There is a very familiar scene. Your bank account shows your paycheck in the morning, and by that same afternoon, you already feel more relaxed about spending. Lunch is no longer about eating enough. It becomes about eating something that makes you feel better after a hard month. That evening, you scroll on your phone, see something you do not really need, but in that moment it somehow feels reasonable. A pair of shoes as a reward, headphones to work more efficiently, a nice meal to comfort yourself. The money does not disappear all at once in one big transaction. It dissolves through a series of small, soft, smooth decisions that seem harmless. Then at the end of the month, the familiar line shows up again. I do not even know where my money went this month. But actually, you do know. You just do not want to call it by its real name. The problem is not that you lack discipline. The problem is that you are forcing yourself to make the right decision at the exact moment your brain is weakest, when the money is sitting right in front of you and your emotions really want a reward. Human beings have an annoying bias. We almost always choose the reward right now over the bigger benefit later. The brain does not hate saving. It just sees the present as more urgent than the future. Saving about $40 next month or 1 million Vietnamese dong sounds nice. But a good dinner tonight always feels more real, closer, easier to touch. That is why so many people do not fail because they are lazy. They fail because they let their finances depend on their day-to-day emotions. People who manage to keep money are not necessarily stronger. Usually, they just do not have to fight themselves as much. On payday, the money is split automatically. One part into the emergency fund, one part into the investment account, and one part for spending. No bargaining, no delay. No waiting to see whether this month there will be something left over. Because the truth is, every month comes with a very good reason not to have anything left over. Your birthday, your best friend's wedding, your phone starts lagging. Work gets so stressful that you feel like you need to blow off steam. Your body feels exhausted, so you feel like you need to make up for it. Life produces reasons faster than you can build discipline. The paradox here is this: the people who live more freely are often the ones who lock away some of their choices early. They do not give themselves permission to spend everything first and then hope whatever remains will somehow save their future. They accept a dry, boring system in exchange for a life that feels less panicked. Most people do the opposite. They keep every option wide open in the present, only to trap themselves inside very few options in the future. Notice this: a person without a money system has to start over every single month, and anything that has to be restarted again and again will eventually wear you down. You cannot build wealth from short bursts of motivation. Wealth is built from quiet flows that are steady, cold, and almost dull. Nobody applauds when you automatically move about $120 into an investment fund every month, which is around 3 million Vietnamese dong. Nobody is impressed when you do not touch that money for years. But those boring actions are exactly what one day will stand between you and a life of dependence. A lot of people think they need to earn more to feel safe. Sometimes what they really need is to stop letting every dollar pass through emotion first. Because once money has to ask your feelings for permission to stay, it is almost guaranteed to leave. You do not keep money through temporary bursts of determination. You keep money through a system cold enough that emotion does not get a vote. The third habit sounds deeply uninspiring, but it is what separates adults from people who are only pretending to be adults. Always have an emergency fund big enough that you do not have to sell your future cheap when life turns on you. There is a kind of fake peace a lot of people are living in. The paycheck still arrives regularly, work does not seem unstable yet, health is still okay, family has not faced a major crisis, so they believe everything is under control. Until one day, the phone rings at 2 in the morning. A loved one is in the hospital. The company starts layoffs. The car breaks down during the exact week you need it most. The landlord raises the rent or suddenly tells you to move out. These things are not rare, they just rarely happen at the exact moment you are fully prepared. And that is when the truth shows up fast. Many people do not actually have a financial foundation. They just have a temporarily stable cash flow. What is frightening about a crisis is not only that it takes your money, it also takes the quality of your decisions. When your bank account gets thin, your brain does not function the way it usually does. You start thinking shorter, faster, and riskier. A terrible job suddenly becomes, let me just survive a few more months. A high-interest loan turns into, let me put out the fire first and deal with the rest later. An investment sitting at a loss still has to be sold because you need cash. A toxic relationship becomes harder to leave because moving out costs too much right now. That is the part people rarely talk about. Lacking an emergency fund is not just lacking money. It is being forced to make major decisions when you are at your weakest. A lot of people love talking about investing, financial freedom, increasing income, and big leaps. But they avoid a naked truth. If you do not have a cushion, you will always live in a state where you are easy to bend. You do not need a massive shock to break. One badly timed event is enough to unplug every long-term plan you had. And the paradox is this. An emergency fund almost never makes you feel rich. It just sits there. It is not flashy. It does not impress anyone. Looking at it can even feel wasteful, like dead money doing nothing. But that seemingly idle money is exactly what keeps your life from flying off the rails after one slip. Imagine two people facing the exact same crisis, losing their job for 4 months. The first person has no backup at all. In the very first week, the pressure is already around their neck. Rent, food, bills, family responsibilities. By the third week, they are no longer choosing the right job. They are choosing anything that gets money coming back quickly. The second person is still worried, still under pressure, but they already have 6 months of living expenses sitting there. The difference is not just the number in the account. The difference is that the second person still has the ability to think. They can reject a bad job. They can wait for a better opportunity. They can protect their standards and their self-respect for a little longer. In moments like that, money does not buy happiness. Money buys time, so you do not have to betray your future. A lot of people say they want to do big things, but they refuse to build protection around the basics. They want to jump high while the ground beneath them is still too thin. Life does not care how beautiful your plan is. Life only needs to knock your rhythm off once to expose the weakest part of your foundation. That is why an emergency fund is not just a financial habit. It is a quiet declaration. I will not let one bad day destroy years of effort. And the price of having no cushion is always higher than people think. It is expensive not only in interest payments, in selling assets too early, or in missed opportunities. It is also expensive in self-respect, worn down every time you have to say, "Fine, I guess this will do," to something you should never have accepted. A lot of people are not poor because they lack ability. They are poor because life throws a crisis at the exact moment they have no room left to breathe. An emergency fund will not make you rich fast. It makes you harder to collapse. And in an unstable world, not being easy to collapse is already a very real form of wealth. The fourth habit is extremely simple, but it makes many people the most uncomfortable. Look directly at your cash flow instead of living by feeling. There is a familiar scene. At the end of the month, you open your banking app, scroll through a few transactions, then quickly close it. Not because there is nothing to see, but because the more you look, the worse it feels. Money left too fast. Small charges appear everywhere like ants. Morning coffee, late-night food delivery, a few online purchases that did not seem like much, several apps charging automatically, a few rides because you did not want to deal with the heat, one meetup to relieve stress. None of those expenses is large enough to make you feel like you are blowing money, but together they are large enough for you to end every month with the same line. It is not like I even spent that much. And that is the most dangerous trap of all. Living by feeling. Feeling always tells you that your spending is pretty normal because the brain does not remember money by totals. It remembers money one separate moment at a time. $4 does not hurt. $8 does not seem significant, but do that 5 times a week, 4 weeks a month, 12 months a year, and suddenly you have thrown away thousands of dollars on things that did not really make your life better. The paradox is that people are terrified of facing a clear number, but perfectly willing to live in vagueness for a very long time. We would rather feel a little bad each time money leaves than sit down once and look closely enough to see how uncontrolled our life really is. People who keep money are usually not smarter. They are just more honest about what is happening. They know how much they spent this month on food, on transportation, and on purchases made because they felt sad, tired, or in need of a reward. They do not do that to shame themselves. They do it to cut through the illusion. Because as long as money remains vague, you will always see yourself as a victim of circumstance. But once the numbers are clear, you start realizing the problem is not, I do not earn enough. The problem is that small leaks are quietly draining your future. A lot of people want to change their life, but refuse to look at their own bills. The truth is simple. What you do not measure, you cannot control. What you refuse to look at will eventually control you. Money does not disappear on its own. It leaves your pocket through decisions too small to shock you, but steady enough to damage a long stretch of life. The fifth habit sounds tiny, but over the years it saves an enormous amount of money. Do not buy immediately when emotion first rises. Some spending decisions happen so fast that there is barely time to think. You just had an argument. You are tired. You are sick of work. And while scrolling on your phone, you happen to see something that feels so right for you. A nice pair of shoes, a new phone, a watch, a course you may never actually take, a trip booked in a rush because you feel like you need to escape. In the moment you hit pay, what you are often buying is not the item itself. What you are buying is a brief sense of relief. The feeling of being compensated, upgraded, comforted, turned into a different version of yourself, at least for a few minutes. That is why so many things feel incredibly right when you first bring them home. 2 weeks later, they start fading into the background. 1 month later, they are just ordinary objects. 3 months later, you almost forget why they ever seemed so important. But the money is already gone. And the dangerous part is that the brain will not remember the regret as strongly as it remembers the excitement of clicking buy. So it keeps repeating the cycle. Tired, then spend. Sad, then spend. Want a reward, then spend. Trying to save yourself through shopping sounds harmless, until one day you look back and realize you were using money to treat feelings money could never really heal. The paradox is this. The more you buy to feel better, the weaker you become financially. Because emotional spending does not just take money from the present, it also takes away options from the future. One purchase worth a few $100s or several million Vietnamese dong may not ruin you. But 10, 20, or 30 of those over a few years will quietly wear away what could have become an emergency fund, an investment account, or simply enough breathing room to make life less frightening. People who keep money are not cold-hearted. They just create distance between emotion and action. They do not forbid themselves from wanting things. They just do not let that wanting make the decision immediately. Wait 24 hours. For larger purchases, wait 72 hours, even 30 days. It sounds boring, but that delay is what reveals the truth. Is this a real need or just a wave of emotion passing through? So many things that once made you feel desperate to buy turn out to fall out of your mind after just a few days. Nobody becomes richer by reacting quickly to temporary cravings. Financial maturity begins the moment you stop turning every emotion into a transaction. The sixth habit is even less dramatic. Invest consistently instead of waiting until you have extra money, understand enough, or the market looks good. A lot of people say they will start investing. But will is a very dangerous word. It sounds responsible, but in reality, it is often just beautifully disguised procrastination. They say they will wait until next month feels more stable. They will wait until they have a bigger amount, so it is worth investing. They will wait until the market trend looks clearer. They will wait until they learn a little more, so they can feel sure. And then a few months pass, a year passes, and the money is still sitting there. Or worse, it is no longer sitting there at all, because it already dissolved into other, very reasonable needs of life. The hard truth is this: most people do not miss out on investing because they are poor. They miss out because they want to enter in a perfect position. And real life almost never gives anyone a perfect starting point. When they have little money, they say it is not enough. When they have more money, they feel like they need to hold on to it for safety. When the market falls, they get scared. When the market rises, they regret not getting in earlier and think they are too late. In every situation, the brain can find a reason that sounds smart enough to stay out. That is the biggest paradox. Many people think they're being careful, when in reality, they're just delaying with logic. People who quietly grow wealthy usually do not invest by inspiration. They invest by schedule. One amount every month. It does not need to be big. It does not need to be heroic. It does not need to happen at the exact bottom. It just needs to be consistent. Because what creates wealth is not only return. It is how long you stay in the game. Someone who puts in about $120 every month for 10 years, or around 3 million Vietnamese dong a month, does not sound like a thrilling story. But that boring repetition is exactly what gives compounding enough ground to work. The people who keep waiting for the right moment usually lose the most valuable thing youth gives them: time, while mistakes can still be fixed. There is a truth with very little dopamine but a lot of value. In investing, the winner is not always the smartest person. Sometimes it is just the person who sabotages themselves the least. The one who does not jump in and out with every news headline. The one who does not always need to prove they are clever. The one who accepts a simple strategy, a boring strategy, but a durable one. Money does not grow through your moments of excitement. It grows through very ordinary months when you simply keep going. You do not need to wait until you become a confident person before you start investing. Usually, you only become confident after you have been doing it long enough. The loser is not always the one who chooses wrong. Sometimes it is the one who stays out too long, until time is no longer on their side. The seventh habit sounds very positive, but if you misunderstand it, it burns you faster than it burns money. Increase income, but do not turn yourself into a machine that only knows how to sell time in order to live. There is a kind of person who looks very admirable from the outside, always busy. They finish their main job and still take on side work. Weekends are never fully off. Even while eating with friends, they are still holding the phone and replying to clients. Every month seems to bring in more money than the month before, and because of that, they believe they are moving in the right direction. But if you look more closely, you will see a colder truth. Many people are not really increasing income. They are only increasing the number of hours they must trade in order to maintain an ever more expensive lifestyle. Money goes up, but life shrinks. The more they earn, the harder it becomes to rest. The more capable they become, the more work gets pulled toward them. The more responsible they are, the less they dare to stop. This is a very subtle trap because society rewards it. Busy people look valuable. People with calendars that are always full are often seen as people who are growing. But being busy does not mean moving up. Some people truly earn more, yet their whole financial system remains incredibly fragile. Because if they stop working for 1 month, everything starts shaking immediately. In other words, they do not own their income. Their income owns them. The most painful insight here is that many people are addicted to the feeling of effort. Effort produces something highly addictive, the feeling that you have earned the right to reward yourself. After a day of working to the point of exhaustion, you feel like you deserve compensation through spending, rest, or rewards that match the suffering. And so the loop begins. Work more to earn more to spend on how tired you are, then have to work even more to support that version of life. The danger of this loop is that it does not break you all at once. It just wears you down slowly while you keep believing you are making progress. People who go far usually do not only ask, "How do I earn more?" They ask the harder questions. How do I make each hour of my time worth more? What skill helps me increase my value without doubling my time? What can I package, systemize, or multiply instead of selling 1 hour at a time? That is when financial thinking starts to mature. Because maturity is not earning more money by making yourself more exhausted. Maturity is understanding that time, health, and attention are also assets. And if you burn all of those to get money, you may not be winning at all. The paradox is that many people earn money in order to gain freedom, but the way they earn it kills freedom before freedom ever gets a chance to arrive. They have income, but no space. Money comes in, but they have no energy left to live. From the outside, they seem to be moving up, but inside, they always feel chased. A life like that is easy to admire from a distance, but very hard to breathe inside. You absolutely should increase your income, but do not let every step upward come with losing another piece of your life. Earning money with time is the first step. Keeping your time while your money still grows is when you truly begin to step out of the game most people are trapped in. The eighth habit is something few people want to admit, but it shapes your wallet more than you think. Choose your environment, your social circle, and your spending standard consciously. There are expenses you think you freely chose, but really you are spending so you do not feel out of place. A friend group where weekends automatically mean going somewhere nice, ordering extra because if you are already out, you might as well do it right, traveling somewhere fancy enough for photos, making birthdays feel properly impressive, upgrading the car after a few years of work, upgrading the phone, dressing in ways that look more next level. Nobody is holding a knife to your hand and forcing you to spend, and precisely because nobody is forcing you, that pressure becomes harder to see. It moves through a very light feeling, the discomfort of being different, being seen as behind, being judged as not doing well. And then one small decision after another starts drifting away from what you truly need and moving closer to what the crowd around you considers normal. This is the thing many people avoid. People do not spend only because of need. Very often, we spend in order to belong. An expensive meal is no longer just a meal. It becomes a ticket into a conversation. A luxury item is no longer just an object. It becomes a quiet way of telling the world you are not standing outside. A trip is not only rest, it becomes proof that you are also living in the right rhythm, like everyone else. The paradox is that what drains your money most is often not greed. It is the fear of standing alone. And environment has a very quiet kind of power. If you're in a group where everybody thinks installment payments are normal, spending to blow off stress is reasonable, buying things to prove yourself is necessary, then sooner or later you start seeing those behaviors as standard too. Not because you are weak, but because the human brain learns group norms much faster than we realize. On the other hand, if you are surrounded by people who talk about investing, emergency funds, keeping money, and building assets instead of only showing off lifestyle, you will notice something strange. Being thoughtful with money no longer feels lonely. The cost of being in the wrong environment does not arrive immediately. It shows up a few years later, when you suddenly realize you have been spending by a set of standards you never truly chose. You work hard, but the reward keeps getting sucked away to maintain some collective image. You think you are enjoying your youth, but in reality, you are paying to keep your membership in a circle that, if you walked away from it, might actually let you breathe easier. And the most painful part is that many people know this but still keep going, because changing environments means accepting that for a while you may look less impressive. People who grow wealthy quietly usually do one very unflashy thing. They choose to stay close to people who make them calmer, not more impulsive. They stay in spaces where saving is not seen as pathetic, investing is not seen as dull, and not chasing every trendy standard of living is not treated like failure. Because they understand something very real.
If your environment keeps making you feel ashamed of being thoughtful, sooner or later, you will pay for the fact that your courage was not strong enough. Part 10. The ninth habit is something almost nobody brags about, but it quietly determines whether you become wealthier or just busier. Learn to endure slowness, repetition, and the feeling that nothing breakthrough-worthy is happening. There is a moment that makes people destroy their own progress very easily. After a few months of living with discipline and still not seeing life change much, you still go to work, still save, still invest consistently, still have not had a dramatic jump in income, still do not see your account looking as beautiful as you imagined. And that is exactly when a very dangerous feeling appears. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe living like this forever is just too boring. Maybe I need something bigger. Many people do not quit because they failed. They quit because progress is too quiet. This is the psychological part people rarely say out loud. Human beings are addicted to the feeling of acceleration. We love things that give quick feedback. A fast, profitable deal. One explosive month. A course that promises to change your life. A big decision that makes you feel like you just turned a new page. Real wealth building works in an incredibly unstimulating way. It is more like planting a tree than pressing a button. On many days, nothing seems different, but the roots are growing downward. You just cannot see them. And because you cannot see them, people are quick to underestimate them. The paradox is this: the things that truly change your life usually do not feel life-changing while you are doing them. They repeat until they become dull. Money set aside every month. One decision not to buy. 1 year of not raising your living standard too quickly. One skill quietly sharpened. One investment account getting a little bigger over time. No drama, no rush, no spectacular story to tell. But precisely because it feels so ordinary, most people cannot tolerate it. They need the feeling that they are flying, when in reality, what they really need is not to kick away the ladder just because the climb is taking too long. The people who go far are usually not more excited. They are just less panicked when progress is slow. They understand that the stage where wealth is forming looks a lot like a life where nothing much seems worth talking about. Nobody applauds when you keep your rhythm in month 17. Nobody is amazed that you are still patient with the small steps. But the ability to endure that quiet stage is exactly the rare strength. Because in reality, many people are not poor because they lack intelligence. They are poor because every few months they need a new feeling in order to believe they are still on the right path. You have to accept a slightly sad truth. Most financial progress does not arrive with dramatic music. It arrives on very ordinary days, when you keep doing the right thing even though nobody confirms it is working yet. The winners are not always better in strategy. Sometimes they are just better at not betraying a good plan simply because it has not had time to feel exciting. The 10th habit sounds unrelated to money, but it determines almost your entire financial path. Keep your personal life stable enough that you do not keep sabotaging yourself. A lot of people talk about money as if it is only about income, investing, or skill. But the truth is, your wallet usually gets burned not by one stupid financial decision, but by an emotionally unstable life. Too little sleep makes impulsive spending more likely. Prolonged stress pushes you to shop in order to reward yourself. A toxic relationship ruins your focus, lowers your performance, and then makes you use money to patch the emotional holes it created. Working in exhaustion for too long leads to the point where you suddenly quit, abruptly stop, or destroy all the discipline you built just because you want to live for yourself a little. Many people think they are weak with money. In reality, they are leaking somewhere else, and money is just where the consequences become easiest to see. This is the paradox most people do not want to hear. Sustainable finances cannot grow out of a life that is always quietly on fire. You cannot build wealth with a mind that is constantly overloaded, a body that is always tired, and a nervous system that is used to reacting instead of choosing. Because in the end, every financial strategy passes through behavior, and behavior passes through the way your life feels every day. A person who gets enough sleep, works with rhythm, lives with less drama, and makes fewer decisions in panic is not only healthier, that person also has a higher chance of becoming wealthier,
Not because they are more talented, but because they sabotage their own process less often. People who become sustainably wealthy before 40 are usually not only good at making money, they are good at keeping their life from falling apart. They understand that every time personal life turns chaotic, money becomes a fire extinguisher. And when money is constantly being used to put out fires, it never gets the chance to accumulate into freedom. In the end, the goal is not only to have more money. The goal is to have a life that cannot be knocked down easily by one bad month, one emotional decision, or one unexpected shock. Quietly becoming wealthy before 40 is not about beating other people. It is about reaching a point where you have the right to say no to the things that are wearing your life down. Because money, at the deepest level, does not buy status. It buys the power to choose. If you had to pick the hardest habit out of these 10, which one do you think you have been avoiding the most?